On August 7th, 2025, Dodge launched its new muscle car, the Charger 6-pack. And the moment it entered the market, people started hating it. Social media and Reddit were filled with hate comments. But this was not the first time. In recent years, whenever a new muscle car was launched, it faced the same fate. People complained about its performance, looks, and even sound.
It was supposed to be fun, but if you want a boat, there you go.
But there was a time when American cars had personality, bright colors, louder engines, and a feeling that every car is different. It wasn't just a car, it was a reflection of your identity. That was the golden age of the American muscle car. So, what really happened, and how that era came to an end? If you ask a car enthusiast which car was the first muscle car, the answer will shift from person to person. Some will say it was the 1964 Pontiac GTO, while others will argue it was the 1949 Oldsmobile Rocket 88, the 1955 Chrysler C300, or the 1961 Chevrolet Impala SS409, and so on. While all of these cars helped shape the muscle car era, they were not the full story. To understand where it really started, we must go back to the beginning, or to the end of World War II. After the war, young American men came home having lived among machines, aircraft, and danger. They missed that thrill, and the closest thing that could give them that thrill was cars. But in the late 1940s, American cars were mostly built for families, not for thrill. So, they started making their own fast cars. They took cheap cars like Ford Model Ts and Model As, stripped them of extra weight, and modified them for more speed. Fords were popular because they were easy to find, easy to work on, and had an affordable V8 engine. This was the beginning of hot rod culture, and this is where the basic idea of the muscle car started. California's dry lake beds like El Mirage and Rosamond became perfect places to test fast cars. In 1949, racers gathered at Goleta Air Base near Santa Barbara for the first organized drag race. The track was roughly a quarter-mile long, which later became the natural home of muscle cars. Just 2 years later, hot rod editor Wally Parks founded the NHRA. Within 4 years, it had sanctioned 68 drag strips across 31 states, transforming drag racing into a national phenomenon. As hot rod culture grew, people wanted more speed, but early engines could only go so far. Ford's flathead V8 became popular because it was cheap and easy to find, but it wasn't built for serious performance. But overhead valve engines changed the game. They could handle more compression, which meant more power, and modern fuel technologies made it more practical. By the late 1940s, Detroit was rapidly reinventing the V8. Between 1949 and 1954, Oldsmobile, Cadillac, Chrysler, and Ford each launched powerful new overhead valve V8 engines that transformed American performance. The muscle car hadn't arrived yet, but its foundation was firmly in place, and a new generation was ready for something faster, louder, and unmistakably their own. The American population exploded between 1946 and 1964, with around 76 million children born during that period. These were the baby boomers, and when the first wave of this generation was ready to purchase its first cars, it created a massive youth market. But automakers did not immediately understand how to serve this market. They kept building family cars, compact cars, and sporty versions of regular models. At the top of the American auto industry was General Motors. GM already had a strong reputation with young drivers due to its factory-backed racing programs. But racing also brought safety concerns and public criticism. By 1963, the company was under pressure over both car safety and its growing monopoly over the market. So, to save its image, the company decided to pull out of its factory-backed racing divisions, and one of these divisions was Pontiac. For Pontiac, this was a huge problem. They had built much of its image around racing success, and just when enthusiasts were starting to see Pontiac as GM's performance brand, that advantage was suddenly taken away. But Pontiac's chief engineer, John DeLorean, had other plans. In 1963, during a Saturday morning brainstorming session, DeLorean was with Pontiac engineers Bill Collins and Russ G. They were looking at a prototype 1964 Tempest Coupe fitted with a 326 cubic inch V8 engine. Then Collins suggested that Pontiac's larger 389 cubic inch V8 would fit into the same engine bay because it used the same engine mounts as the 326. DeLorean approved the experiment, and within a week, they had a Tempest Coupe with a 389 V8 under the hood. That Saturday morning in Michigan marked the true beginning of the muscle car. After one drive in the prototype, DeLorean knew they had found the car Pontiac needed. It was a sporty, intermediate-sized car with big V8 power, built for the new baby boomer market. DeLorean named it the GTO, short for Gran Turismo Omologato. The car had an attitude, and it was affordable for young buyers, with a base price of $2,776. The GTO was a massive success and sold 32,450 units that year. This triggered a massive shift in American car culture, and suddenly, every American automaker wanted in. Chrysler responded with the Dodge Charger, with its fastback roofline, hidden headlights, and 4 bucket seats. The Charger stood out immediately, and if a buyer had the money, they could option it with the 426th Street Hemi, rated at 425 horsepower. While GM and Chrysler were chasing big V8 muscle cars, Ford was building something different. Lee Iacocca, a Ford executive at the time, wanted a sporty 4-seat car that brought Ford's total performance image to regular buyers. The job went to Don Fry and Hal Sperlich. But inside Ford, almost nobody wanted it. The company was still haunted by the Edsel, a massive failure that had cost Ford more than $350 million. So, every time Fry brought the project to Ford's executive committee, it was rejected. After the 5th meeting, Henry Ford II finally gave his approval, but it came with a warning. If this car flopped, Fry would take the fall. It was a gamble that could have ended his career, but Fry didn't fail, and the car that emerged became one of the most iconic vehicles in automotive history, the Ford Mustang.
Coming April 17th, the unexpected, the new Ford Mustang. Brilliant new kind of car. A new generation of Fords for the new breed of Americans who want stick-shift action and room for 4. This is for them. This is Mustang.
On April 17, 1964, Ford launched the Mustang. By the end of its first year, the company had sold 418,812 units. With the Mustang, Ford created a new category called the pony car. It was smaller, stylish, sporty, and aimed directly at young buyers. It was not a traditional muscle car like the GTO, but as Ford added stronger V8 options, the Mustang moved deeper into muscle territory. This helped Mustang to dominate the whole muscle car market. But by 1967, Chevrolet answered Mustang's dominance with the Camaro, and this led to one of America's biggest car rivalries, Mustang versus Camaro. Even though the Camaro received a strong response, Ford had already updated the Mustang with sharper styling, more features, and a big block 390 engine. That year, Chevrolet sold 2,200,906 Camaros, while Ford sold more than twice as many Mustangs. So even though the Camaro was a serious challenger, Ford was still ahead. From there, the fight kept going. Ford pushed back with cars like the Mustang GT, Shelby GT350, GT500, Boss 302, and Boss 429. Chevrolet came up with the Camaro SS, Z28, big block Camaros, and later the ZL1. And by the 70s, muscle car performance had reached its peak. The Mustang and Camaro rivalry was in full swing, and cars like the Firebird, Chevelle SS, Charger, Challenger, Road Runner, and GTO filled the market. But inside the industry, People already knew the era was under pressure. Muscle cars were becoming too powerful, too expensive to insure, and harder to defend in a changing America. And then everything collapsed in the most American way possible. On October 6, 1973, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel. During the conflict, Arab members of OPEC announced that they would stop selling oil to countries that supported Israel. Since the US backed Israel, Arab oil-producing nations cut off oil exports to America. This caused a sudden fuel shortage. Americans, who were used to cheap gas, now had to wait in long lines at gas stations and pay much more to fill their cars. And for big V8 muscle cars, this became a serious problem.
The oil embargo's biggest casualty was the big car. In November, General Motors cut production by 79,000 automobiles. Big car dealers began to think small.
At the same time, baby boomers were getting older. Many were starting families, which meant they needed more practical cars instead of loud, powerful ones. Then, environmental pressure made things worse. Smog had become a major public concern in America. Under President Richard Nixon, the federal government created the EPA, and passenger cars became a major target for emissions control. To meet the new rules, car companies had to change their engines. Compression ratios were lowered. Intake and exhaust systems became more restricted. Emissions equipment were added. And all of this robbed muscle cars of power. By this point, these big, fast cars were also becoming a serious liability. Many young drivers pushed them too hard, which led them to more crashes and more expensive repairs. Hence, insurance companies started charging huge premiums on these cars. This made the muscle cars less desirable as many young buyers could afford the car, but they could no longer pay the insurance that came with it. All of this slowly destroyed the muscle car market. By 1972, big block engines were disappearing. Horsepower numbers were falling. Even the word performance started to fade from brochures. Pontiac still tried to go out swinging with the Super Duty 455 Firebird. It was one of the last true big engine muscle cars and marked the end of an era. Some manufacturers tried to keep old names alive by putting badges like Road Runner, 442, and Cobra on economy cars or personal luxury cars, but the feeling was gone. The market moved toward cars like the Monte Carlo, Cordobas, and Landau roof coupes. By the late 70s, the most muscular American vehicle was not even a car. It was Dodge's Lil Red Express pickup. In the 80s, technology slowly helped recover performance. Automakers learned how to meet emission standards without completely killing power. But by this point, American buyers had already changed. Japanese brands like Toyota, Honda, and Datsun were already dominating. Their cars were smaller, cheaper, more reliable, and much more fuel efficient. Over the years, muscle cars have tried to bring back their old identity. Pontiac revived the GTO in 2004, but it did not have the visual presence people expected. Ford did it better with the 2005 Mustang, using retro styling that reminded people of the original without feeling like a direct copy.
You're right, it's not super cool, but it's borderline.
But these modern muscle cars were still only shadows of what the originals once were. They became collector items, a valuable toy kept alive by nostalgia and car culture. Muscle cars mark a very specific moment in America, when cheap gas, open roads, drag strips, and the baby boomers all came together at the same time. Unlike the modern cars, muscle cars were never about comfort or control. They didn't need power steering, air conditioning, or a computer deciding what the driver was allowed to do. Real muscle cars had big engines for people with big enough balls to use them. And that's about it. What more do you need?